We're here in Davos with Professor Roubini, a world-renowned economist. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Roubini. Always good to have you here with us.
Such a pleasure.
So let me start talking about if today, let's say you're a policymaker or you're at a central bank. There are some benefits, for example, from a policy perspective, being able to see what a CBDC, where the impact of your certain policy, or even, I would argue that to a certain extent, the one fighting chance we have against corruption is actually by central bank digital currencies. You don't think some of the benefits outweigh some of the potential risks that we have with CBDCs?
I think that eventually, cash is going to disappear. It'll be all digital money, including digital currencies. So gradually, every central bank is going to be introducing. My point is not whether it's good or bad having central bank digital currency. But every time a central bank talks about the CBDC, the blockchain, the crypto guys say, hey, they're on that bandwagon. Nonsense. All these proposals about central bank digital currency, one, have nothing to do with blockchain, nothing to do with crypto. Two, if a central bank digital currency were to be introduced, will dominate, first of all, any one of these shit coins that are not even currencies for many reasons. No one's going to want to use them for payment because you have something safer, quicker, efficient, without risk of any sort. Everyone's going to use it. And the privacy issue can be also fully addressed by having these things being private unless a law enforcement authority looks for your records for legitimate reasons. Currently, we have a system where payment system occur through private commercial banks. Your deposits are part of the payment system. So suppose that you have a central bank digital currency. The current financial system is all based on reserve, on a fractional reserve banking system, where the banks essentially create money when they create deposits, and then they leverage deposit and do maturity transformation. If suddenly everybody is going to switch to the central bank digital currency because it dominates, you have an entire collapse of the commercial banking system, or you have to transform it. You have to go to a system of narrow banking, where the only narrow bank is the central bank, and then banks have to borrow money long-term and invest money long-term rather than doing maturity transformation. That's the challenge that comes from the benefits and the cost of having a central bank digital currency. It has nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with blockchain, zero. I had a conversation with a major central banker just the other day in Europe, on a country is thinking about creating a digital currency. We spoke for 2 hours. There was not even mention of blockchain or crypto.
So let me actually talk about the crypto industry. I know over the last couple of months and years, you've been very, very negative on Bitcoin and the broader crypto ecosystem. To be fair to the crypto ecosystem, the industry has institutionalized a lot over the last couple of months by being regulated and having institutional players in the space. Has your perception of the crypto industry changed now, or it's still the same that you believe you're very negative on the ecosystem?
I'm still very negative both about crypto and even about blockchain. I've said it's the most overhyped technology ever. First observation I'll make is calling them cryptocurrencies is a joke. It's a joke because they have absolutely none of the feature of what money or a currency should be. For something to be money, it has to have four functions. One has to be a unit of account, and no goods and services is priced in crypto. Two has to be a single numeraire, so I can compare the relative price of a Coca-Cola and a Pepsi-Cola. If you have a world of tokenization where to buy Coca-Cola you need a Coca coin and to buy a Pepsi coin you need a Pepsi coin, that's a world of barter in which you cannot even compare relative prices of any goods. So it doesn't make sense. You need to have a single numeraire. Three is not scalable. With Bitcoin you can do 5 transactions per second. With the Visa network you can do 25,000 transactions per second, and there is no way to scale it. And it's not a stable store of value against your wealth or buying goods and services. That's why even Bitcoin conferences don't accept Bitcoin for payment. So in which sense are cryptocurrencies? These are not currencies, let alone that 90% of them were scams to begin with. All these shit coins and all these ICOs, they were a total scam to begin with. They were just a bunch of crooks, criminals, literally trying to take your money and run it.
But you don't think, to make a fair comparison, comparing the Bitcoin network to Visa, which is more payments, whereas you don't think we should compare Bitcoin to more gold or other similar assets?
Well, that was created as an alternative to traditional money, saying it'll be a payment system. Now that everybody realizes it cannot be a payment system, people say it could be a store of value. It's a store of value that is highly volatile, highly risky. Went at peak at 20,000, then collapsed at 3,000. Even with the rally this year is 65% down below the peak, and the top 10 others are down 80% from the peak, and thousands of these shitcoins are gone disappeared, and they've lost 99% from the peak. So people complain about saying the central bank have debased the dollar. It took 100 years for the real value of the dollar to be reduced, unquote, by 90%. Most of these things have lost their value in 12 months by 99%. So lots of the claims are just don't make any sense, frankly.
Let me ask you, Professor Roubini, about decentralized finance, DeFi. There's obviously a lot of talk right now about how a financial transaction can take place without the traditional intermediaries, and we're seeing in the lending space and some stable coins in the crypto space. What's your view? What's your view of the future of the DeFi movement? Do you believe it has a chance, or it'll remain always marginal?
I think it's marginal. The idea that crypto and blockchain is decentralized actually is factually untrue. There's a massive centralization of miners. The top four control 80% plus of mining of Bitcoin and all other major ones. There's a centralization of exchanges. 99% of all transactions occur on centralized exchanges. All the centralized exchanges have flopped, have not gone anywhere. They have no liquidity. They're fake transactions, even in centralized, let alone the decentralized. You have a centralization of power of the developers that are, police, judge, prosecutor, and everything. When the code is not law, because when the code fails, there is hacking, they change the code, and they do the forking. There is massive centralization of wealth. The Gini coefficient of Bitcoin is worse than the one of North Korea, where Kim Jong-un and his family owns pretty much everything. So there is a rhetoric about decentralizing, but there is nothing decentralized about it. Then, and Vitalis Buterin's famous inconsistent trinity that says you cannot have a system that is scalable, decentralized, and secure is true. And the reality of it is not decentralized, is not scalable, and is not even secure, at least in traditional financial system or in FinTech. You have centralization, you have scalability, and you have some degree of security, right? So, you have at least 2 out of 3. Instead, you don't have any decentralization, you have no scalability, and there is no security in crypto.
Professor Roubini, we're going to finish last minute with some fire round questions. I have my bell with me. So we basically ask you some quick questions, like give me 1 or 2 word answers. We'll go through them pretty quickly. Let's go. Let's start quickly with, if you're back in university today, what is the one course you would take that you wish you had taken back in the day?
Something on computer science.
There we go. What do you do on your spare time when you're not traveling the world or covering economics?
I like art, culture, good food, leisure, good places.
Professor Roubini, what is keeping you up at night right now?
I worry about, the future of the global economy. I worry about financial risk in the next crisis.
Yeah, well, pretty good things to worry about. If you're not an economist, what would you be doing?
In my next life, I wouldn't mind to be a great tenor. I love opera, so if I'm not reborn as a cockroach, I'd like to be a great tenor.
If you're, let's say back, you were 20 years old again, and you had a choice to live in any country in the world, what country would you live in?
I moved to the US, but I must say I enjoy the old world, Europe, because there is art, culture, sophistication, other stuff. Because half of my age, I would go back to Europe.
We see a pattern there. And if there's one book on economics, not your own, that you would recommend our audience to read, what would it be?
I don't know if there is one book. I think that books on AI are important. I love the books by Yuval Harari, both Sapiens and Homo Deus, on what's going to be the future, whether Homo sapiens is going to disappear and we're going to become immortal and bionic. So that says something about the future of humanity.
And the last question, if you could have lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would you have lunch with?
That's a good question. I would have lunch with the Dalai Lama. I think he's a great wise man.
Here we go. Professor Roubini, thank you very much. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good being with you.